Well, it is once again that time of year. And by that time of year, I don't mean holiday season, though it is indeed holiday season. I mean that time of year where our government, the government of the United States of America, does the kind gesture of allowing us to express ourselves. And they allow us to express ourselves, particularly in most cases, pretty much every case, our anger and frustration through voting. And of course, that is done through a process known as elections. This video is being recorded on November the 8th, 2022, the day that the said midterm elections are set to take place. And of course, many Americans around the country are gearing up to go show their pride for whatever particular party they associate themselves with, whatever particular politician that they associate themselves with, and they are going to take part in the exercise of expressing themselves and go vote, seemingly hoping to improve. That word improve has deep quotations around it, their current situation or some other. But what I would like to do in this video is explain this awkward phenomenon and why there really is, in its present form, no meaning to it. And there's very good reason. But firstly, I'd like to provide provide a little backstory, but more accurately to say, set the stage for this brief conversation. Over the past couple of years, really over the past several decades, but we can narrow this down. The American people, we the working people of this country, the average American, we've suffered greatly at the hands of many. Just to give you a couple of examples, we were hit with a viral pandemic in which many of us, our fellow brothers and sisters, have died from. We were also struck with an economic downturn, a crash of this economy, which under this system, namely capitalism, happens every 4 to 7 years periodically. Millions of people lose their jobs, but nonetheless, we press on. Well, under those particular catastrophes, one might say, well, the government or the rich and the corporations, through the aid of the government, continued to enrich themselves while the mass of people struggled heavily and still continue to do so. But in combination with those deep problems, that deep austerity, neglect, and alienation and degradation, we were then hit with an inflation. Yes, the people that have the ability to raise prices in this country have indeed raised them. And our government had the bright idea to stop the inflation by raising interest rates, which hurts, once again, us, the massive people that had nothing to do with the inflation in the first place. And having endured all of these problems, having endured stagnant wages since the mid-1970s, having endured a foreign policy that our government is currently undertaking that threatens us with nuclear catastrophe as they engage in a proxy war in Ukraine, and as they're also at the same time saber rattling with the great power that is the People's Republic of China. Their answer to all of this, for us to vent out our frustration and anger and angst and being very unpleased with their governance, is to go and vote. If you go cast your vote, go cast your ballot for this or that particular party, this or that particular politician, things will work out in the end. And you want to know the sad part about this? So many people buy into it. Yes, whether they are on the blue team or the red team, because we only need two political parties in this country. Other countries have dozens, but we only need two because we're America. They believe in this nonsense and they go out and they vote and they partake in this ridiculous game, this farce that our government says will help us. Although there's the Princeton study and many other studies that show that public opinion have no effect on the laws that gets passed in Congress. And so today is that day, indeed, in which this will take place. And I'm not telling you what to do or what not to do. All I'm saying is that you should understand that if you do go to the polls and vote, as long as we operate under a system in which democracy isn't present, and I'll return to that word democracy in just a second, a system in which our government is captured and owned and operated by the big banks, the financial system that basically rules the world, those that are too big to fail, as Barack Obama famously said, the military industrial complex, which threatens us with war, the pharmaceutical industries, the rich, these big CEOs that sit at the top of these big oil industries, such as Exxon and these big energy moguls and what have you. All these different entities and very powerful and authoritative people own our government. If you go to the polls and take part in this exercise, you're doing nothing but playing along with the little game that they've concocted for you to fool you into thinking that you can actually change something by casting that little ballot that they provide to you. Now, let's briefly return to the word democracy. Specifically coming from the Democratic side, Joe Biden and his allies, they continue to say, of course aided by their mainstream media apparatus that they control, that democracy is on the ballot. And they make notions back at the January 6th insurrection. Democracy is on the ballot. If you don't vote Democrat, you'll lose it. My question is, how can we lose something that never existed in the first place? This is no democracy we live in. No, in fact, it's quite the opposite. I'll give you one simple example, though there are plenty. I mentioned the raising of interest rates by our government in order to stop the inflation. We weren't consulted on that. By we, I mean the American people. There wasn't a vote that was held democratically, one person, one vote, to say, is this the way we would like to stop the inflation while threatening the massive people with a recession? We weren't asked. That's not democracy. How can democracy be on the ballot if it never existed in the first place? And there are many other examples, whether it's people trying to form a union and the corporations that own our government not allowing them to do so, and the government not doing anything in retaliation to those corporations. I mean, the list goes on in terms of the lack of democracy. So don't be fooled and be browbeaten into thinking that you must do something in order to save democracy. You can't save what's not there. Anyway, I wanted to hold this brief conversation because I thought it was relevant. And I truly do believe that as long as we continue to allow ourselves to be divided among ideological, cultural, racial, whatever line there is, because we know that the people that own and run this system, the powerful, those with the most authority, they have many means at their disposal to their propaganda machine in order to do so, to divide us, to keep us extremely polarized. I mean, I see it every day with people gearing up to go vote for their team because their team is the correct team. I'll give you one more example before I close. If either political party did their job correctly, well then we wouldn't see this pendulum swing from one party to the next every 2, 4, 8 years. No, indeed, we wouldn't. If one political party did their job correctly, well then that party would indeed remain in power because everyone would continue to vote for them because they deliver for the American people. That should tell you something about the American political system.